This is SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. I'm your host, Todd Kirk. I'm joined by the best elf in Santa's workshop, Casey Trujillo.
Fair point. That is, I have received that award for the past 3 years. Thank you very much, Todd, for recognizing that. I don't think enough people know that, but
Yes, it's
Todd,
true.
good to be with you. We are recapping our latest season. I can't believe we've been doing this for some time, and it's always fantastic to be able to sit down and to learn from experts out there. I think that's one of the things that shocked me about creating a podcast was how willing people are to give of their time and their talents and their knowledge. So it's always been beneficial for us.
It's true. Casey, you and I have been doing this now for a total of 2 years. Can you believe that?
Dang.
So this is, we basically have split our seasons into somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 episodes each. In the very beginning, you and I actually posted 2 episodes every single week. We did a full 30 or 45-minute episode followed by a recap on Fridays. And now we just do it weekly rather than twice a week because that was unsustainable. We were going to die. So
you know what? Consistency is the key in whatever you might be able to do. But Todd, what we're here to do today is, according to the data, the statistics, we are going to talk about and recap the top 5 episodes of this last season. So coming in at number 5, who do we have, Todd?
Well, yes, our 5th most popular episode. So by the way, what we're doing today is we're not talking about Casey and I's favorite episodes. We're just talking about the most viewed episodes that we've had so far.
Right.
And so that's an important key. If you disagree with this list, if there is something that you really liked in an episode that we did this season, somebody who you feel like really deserves some praise, you should tell us. Put it in the comments. Find us on LinkedIn. Say, why didn't you talk about so-and-so? Well, not enough people knew about that episode, so go tell people about that episode if you really liked it. But our 5th most listened to episode this season so far was actually Courtney Sembler, who was the senior director at HubSpot. She's since moved on. We love Courtney. She's amazing. But that was our 5th most popular episode this season. Courtney, if you're curious, she offered some really great advice about how she came into customer education, how she found her way into that career. Really, really awesome. And she actually had this phrase that I thought was really interesting where she talked about her micro passions, right? And so a lot of times we talk about our big passions, like, oh, I love to learn or I love to explore, right? Those I would say are like our macro passions. One of the things that I thought was really cool was she talked about micro passions. And oftentimes there are really little things that we love that happen on maybe a daily basis, not necessarily like that we find core to our identity, but they're super helpful in figuring out where we end up. And I really liked that concept of thinking through what are the little things that you get passionate about and how does that help you find alignment with your career. And then she talked about how those different elements that you have and that you understand as you bring those in, they make a really big difference when you now are on a team later. Because if you understand yourself and who you work with and how you work, then it makes a really big difference in kind of how you work with your team. So really, really good advice that she had on that front. But I'm curious, if you think about it, Casey, do you have any things that you would call like a micro passion? Something that is kind of the everyday activities that that help you understand better about why you really like what you do?
I think it's just pretty simple of encouraging people that whatever you're doing, how small the effort is, it's improving, and I'm just proud of them. Like, I think that's just one of the things I enjoy is every day I like going to the gym, and I'll see people working their guts out, and I just go stop up and just say, hey, it's inspiring what you're doing today. And it doesn't matter the fitness level. Like for some person, it could be just doing a squat for the first time with their own body weight. I'm like, that is a nice job, because you can tell they're getting out of their comfort zone. I think that's one of the things I loved about Courtney is the way that she got to being the head of HubSpot, and now she is doing a consultant thing with Samantha Murray. So if you're in need of CS consulting or customer education consulting, those two are fantastic. But the way that she got there was by saying yes. And I think this is going to sound a little bit weird, Todd, but I remember someone giving a talk once and saying, who in the room talks to themselves, right? And, like only a small percentage of the people raised their hand. And then the person said, yeah, and everybody else that didn't raise your hand, you're saying to yourself, I don't talk to myself, right? And everybody laughed. I always believe there's like two voices that talk to us. One voice that inspires us to do good, and we'll have those thoughts throughout the day of like, oh, I should do this or I should do that. Or you might hear an opportunity and you're like, I should do that. And then it'll be immediately followed by a second voice that's your like comfort zone voice that says, yeah, let's do that tomorrow. Or, yeah, but this will happen if you do that, and it immediately tries to talk you out of it. And you usually know it's the second voice because it wants you to stay put. It doesn't want you to grow and to try. And I'm not saying the second voice isn't right sometimes, but I'm saying usually the first voice is more right than wrong. And that's what I appreciate about Courtney's stories. I remember saying that, she got brought in, I think, to do like support calls or something. She's like, yeah. And then she got asked to do another job. She's like, yeah. And it consistently led to opportunities, though she was, I think she said, not qualified for those opportunities, but she was willing to dive in and take that. And again, it goes back to that micro passion, right? Like she had these little micro passions about learning and being curious and teaching others. And so that was a fantastic episode, and encourage everybody to go watch it.
Yeah, it's so good. Casey, one last thing, and then we can move on to our fourth most listened to episode this year. But I think one of the things that I love about your comment there is knowing you too and your micro passion. I'm gonna put a label on what you just called that. You weren't a great Boy Scout, I think. Maybe you were.
No,
You were
not. Yeah, I didn't go anywhere.
Casey doesn't love to camp, right? He doesn't like. He'd rather be comfy and cozy than on the dirt and in the cold. But what's interesting is what is the phrase that you learn when you go camping as a explorer, right? You go out in the national parks or you go camping. What are your leaders always tell you and your kid?
Leave it better than you found it.
Leave it better than you found it. Casey is a leave it better than you found it, but with people. He likes to feel like every interaction that he has with somebody that he leaves them better than he found them, which I love that. So
that's a goal. That's the goal, right, TK? That's what we're trying to do with the podcast, right? I mean, obviously, we don't have. This is what we need to do next year, Todd. We need to have unofficial sponsors, people who sponsor the show, but that are not real sponsors or pay us.
I mean, not like non-monetary sponsors.
People who we want to sponsor but don't sponsor, but we like them, so we're
like
going to
McDonald's. Like you love McDonald's,
for example.
So you want to say McDonald's is
unofficial sponsor is McDonald's.
Sponsor.
At some point, I hope they would sponsor us, but the unofficial sponsor is McDonald's and their crispy Diet Coke. So we need to add that next year. We're going to always have an unofficial sponsor.
That's right. We left the podcast better than we found it by always having a not real sponsor. So I love it.
Well, number 4, Todd, is you, Mr. Todd Kirk. And
really?
In this episode, what we talked about was often in customer success, you are asked to do instructor-led training and you do product training. Again, I know most of you have maybe a professional services team, but often you're asked to do some product training, and it's, they'll say, oh, it's just for a small group of users and this and this. In this episode, Todd, you talked about, okay, if you're going to do something, you're going to agree to it. Do something that will drive change. Don't go in there and say, okay, you used to do this in this old software this way, and this is how you're going to do it in this software. We talked about maybe doing these art of the possible tips and tricks type sessions. And you actually gave us one. I think you were reviewing like Outlook and AI, if you're going to Copilot, if you're going to use those things together. But there's 2 things that you said in that, Todd, and I think they correlate, or maybe there's some causation to them. But you had mentioned that, hey, number 1, paint a better state. If you really understand your product, you understand what you're solving for. So there's a current state in which your people that buy your software are working from. So they're, for example, if you're a cloud storage software, hey, you're saying, you send email attachments all the time. Email attachments, there's no benefit to them. There's multiple versions. You can't collaborate in that way besides a reply all email, like just inefficient. So that there's a better way to work, and paint that vision. And while you're painting that vision, the user will ultimately have a wow, and don't steal the wow. So allow them to say, oh, if you hear that, like, oh, or whoa, or you see someone's eyes go up. Hey, we're going to pause. We're going to stop here. Customer, what did you notice about that? Why did that grab your attention? And let them explain that. I thought that was fantastic. Of paint the better state. And when you see those aha moments, let someone explain the aha moment And then even ask, like, why does that matter? Like, why is that beneficial to you? And all of a sudden, as they explain that, others in the room or on the Zoom call or Teams call or whatever might go, oh, yeah, and you know what else we could do? We could do this, right? And then all of a sudden there's a discussion and you just sit back and watch that. TK, as you've been doing that for so long, I mean, you used to be on the road forever. What other advice do you have if you're doing some type of product training? What other advice stuck out to you that you gave our audience in that episode?
Yeah. I mean, I don't remember if I brought this up or not, but on your comment there, this idea of painting the picture and painting the pain and this and the frustration of the situation that you're in, and then revealing and helping them see a solution, but letting it be their aha moment. That's a comment that the reason I love that idea and the reason I've seen it work so much is so have you ever been in a really awesome brainstorming session where I say something and then the thing I said leads you to another idea and
Yeah.
then the thing you said leads me to another idea and then so on and so forth and it just grows. So the reason that works is because something called associative memory. I don't remember if we talked about this or not in that episode, but associative memory is when you associate something that you know with something else that you just learned. And when those dots connect, that's when you all of a sudden have this like spark of ideas. That's what brainstorming is. And that's why I actually think we call our company Brainstorm, is because it's about connecting dots for people. And so when people connect dots, that is the best likelihood of them being motivated and excited to take some level of action because they own it, right? They took something they learned and it became their own. And so that I think is the real idea there. If you are curious, if you want to go back and look at that, just you can go watch it. I try to demonstrate that entire process through training someone on something that a lot of people use every day, which is Outlook, right? So that is kind of the main idea there. And I think there's a lot to learn about how we can be better about creating that kind of that space where your brain gets lit up and can start to see those things that get you excited, get you motivated, and make you want to change your life.
I love it. I always think if you're going to do something in life, do something that will have the greatest amount of impact. Just don't check mark the box, right? And again, we just see. I remember doing that survey to the CSMs at the Churn Zero conference, and we asked, where do you spend a majority of your time? And it was in product training.
Yeah.
So make sure that product training has the
Yeah.
impact.
If you have to do it, it
Right.
should be good, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're looking for. Number 3, Todd, what was our number 3 most watched episode?
Our third most watched episode
Or
was
listened.
Or listened to. I guess, yeah, that's a good question.
Both.
I don't know. We on both, yeah. We haven't done the stats of how many watch versus listen.
Yeah.
Most of you probably just listen. Nobody wants to look at Casey's disgusting mustache.
Exactly. Amen.
But their third most listened was Carson Hetty. He's the managing director of the Americas at the Americas. That sounds weird. Of Americas at Microsoft. And so he's an awesome guy. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn, he posts like crazy. He's got tons of followers, really sharp guy. And Carson is awesome because one of the things that he talked about and one of the phrases that really stuck out to me was the idea that your network is your net worth. And so like, if you look at Carson, he's a guy who really, really believes in networking. And the way he's been able to build his sales career is by building relationships that go deep and broad within an organization. So I love that idea because personally, I'm someone who has been not only really since we got into the podcast space did I really start trying to network better. But like, there's this question of like, what does it mean to network better? And for him, I don't think it means like getting a ton of connections on LinkedIn. It means like legitimately building trust with people so they introduce you to more people and then expanding those relationships with other people and really being able to like develop like real meaningful relationships with people through just grit and persistence and like being vulnerable and pushing your way through so that you can just have resilience and get to more and more deals. And I love that because from a selling perspective, it's sometimes easy to turn into this like transactional state. Mm-hmm. And so I really liked his point of like, no, man, like relationships are hard and building real authentic relationships with other people in a business context. It's not necessarily easy, but like you're going to be way more valuable as an employee, as a seller, as an influencer in your space if you can build up a true, honest, good network. And so I love that concept, and I think it's was really meaningful. One that I want to be better at, obviously, as we move into this new year too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, who couldn't be better at that? Two little things, because I know sometimes it can seem overwhelming where you're like, yes, I want to network, but it seems so hard. Two things. One, if you're just like, hey, I'm going to start with the influence. I don't love social media. I don't love LinkedIn. I don't love doing these things. Start with a simple one of the relationships you do have, where you're like, I have a good relationship, of just saying, hey, customer, I'm trying to expand my network. Who else should I know at your organization? Who else should I know outside of the organization? I just got a message today on LinkedIn from an individual that said, hey, Roger Mendez, past guest. Roger Mendez said, you got to talk to Casey. If you're going to try to do something, you got to talk to Casey. And it's that's simple. So if you're not sure how to do that at a bigger level, just start with the people you know and just say, hey, who else should I know? Who else in your organization should I know? Who else in your department should I know? Who in leadership should I know? Just ask one of those questions, right? That's a good way to start doing that. And then second, if you are going to do something on social media, LinkedIn, whatever it might be, right? Remember how many people consume content versus produce content. And most of us are consumers, right? Most of us go online and take a look. So if you can produce authentic content that you believe in, that's about you, right? Not just like marketing asked me to post this and you just go post. That's not you. That's not who you are. Post some things around that. And again, AI can help you out with that. I'm not saying have AI write everything, but I'm saying have AI assist you with the things that you like to talk about that are of interest to you. Post those things. Post some things about yourself, and put that out there, because you're giving people a glimpse of why they might want to talk to you, right? And so it's a walking billboard that you have the opportunity to do. But don't let that overwhelm you. Start with maybe a post once a week, something like that, right? Don't criticize yourself if you're not doing it often. But either way, just start somewhere, however you might want to approach that.
Yeah, so good. I love it. All right, Casey. So our second most listened to podcast episode this season was actually John Lay, who's the CEO over at Talented Learning. So what stuck out to you from the conversation with John?
Oh my gosh, it's one of the things that I don't know. It's that first time when you go on a diving board, and I think if you all go back, it's the local community pool. You're going on the diving board. You might be 5 or 6, whatever you can remember on your first memory, and you're thinking about jumping in. You're like, oh man, this is so scary. And of course, the adults on the side are like, it's not scary. It's not even that far. But you looking at it that one time, it is terrifying, right? What stuck out to me from John, which I don't believe enough people have the guts to do it, is you should look at your customer education as a product, not a program. And so his job, what he does is he helps organizations outline requirements, RFPs for buying a learning management system. But the thing he always tries to get to with the customers that he's working with is, what are the business outcomes? Could you productize what you're about ready to produce? Like, just don't get into the features so fast. Really think about what you're trying to accomplish. And I don't think enough of us, if you're in the customer education space, look at it and say, could I actually charge for this program? But let's pretend the CEO said, hey, you get to charge for it. How much do you want to charge for it? Do you believe there's enough value in what you're producing that someone would actually pay for it? Because most people have professional services, and what they do is custom videos, and they do instructional-led training, and people pay for that. I'm always going to change for a human. And if you're creating a piece of very custom content, of course I should pay for that. But do people pay for your customer education if it was a product? If they went to your academy, would they pay for it? Would they say this is worth it? John makes reference to that, and I know we've had past guests that talk about that, is, hey, treat this as a product, not a program. I think that mind shift would change the way that we decide things. It's scary to do. It's jumping off the diving board, and that's why most people don't do it. But that's what I appreciated about John as he's going through it is you want to be considered impactful. I remember getting a comment on the episode that we did is why customer education isn't in the executive room, why they don't have a chief learning officers at most of these SaaS organizations. It's because you have no data to show that you're actually producing revenue. You don't have it. And the system you have set up isn't designed to do it. So you're like a support site. Again, I firmly believe customer education should have a seat at that table. There should be a chief learning officer. It's just haven't had the guts to jump in. So that's what I appreciate about John. I don't know, Todd, anything else stick out to you about John's episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, understanding the business goal and how you can actually impact the business is a big one. But this idea of being able to sell what you do and actually make it a product that people are wanting and interested in, I think there's a couple of ways. The most common way, I think a lot of people, if you're in the customer ed space in particular, I mean, obviously we've talked about sellers, we've talked about customer ed people today. Our last one's going to be a different topic. I think a little bit of a dark horse that maybe
Yeah,
surprised me
right.
a little bit. I was looking at. But what's interesting is when it comes down to this idea of productizing customer ed, what does that actually look like? And what's the
Yeah,
best way to do it? I
yeah.
would guess most people would say, I think the answer is to sell courses, or I think the answer is to sell my live training events, right? Sell to attend this event one time, or to sell my certifications. I think those are all true. Those are all valuable. But then what you're actually doing is you're making the individual content piece the product.
Mm,
And I'm like, maybe that's okay, right? Maybe
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
good
yeah.
place to start. But what's interesting is most people think about a program, but they don't productize the program.
Mm,
Meaning, what you really want is the overall experience to be monetized. How do you do that? And
right.
that I think is a really interesting question, because I would say most people aren't necessarily thinking about converting the program into a product. They're thinking about turning the content into a product. And
Mm,
that's, so I can have a program, but I can't productize the program. You see what I'm
yeah.
saying? There's a
No.
little bit of a difference. And I think that's a question that I think that a lot of people need to be thinking about, because there's a difference between productizing a program and just productizing the content that was a part of that program.
And you're also looking at it from a perspective, right, of revenue. But I think another thing that people are trying to say, and I know we shout this episode out a lot. I can't remember what season it was with Ashley DeCurligan, but
Yeah.
going out and getting your customer feedback. If it is a product, not a program, you want feedback. So going to your account executives and saying, "Hey, do you bring up the the customer resources we have to train people at the beginning of the sell? Does that help you sell?"
Right.
I don't even bring it up. Okay, that product's falling short there.
Mm-hmm.
Customer success, are you utilizing this? Well, this is how I use it, and I do this and this and this, but I'm really not highlighting it. I usually just jump on the phone. Why aren't you using it? What is keeping you from using it? Right? So I think that's the other mind shift that happens when it's a product, not a program, is a program is done. A program, here's the program, we roll it out and we see if anyone uses it. A product is ever changing, you know it's ever changing, and you're trying to accommodate the people that are buying it. And your account executives should be buy into what you're producing. Your CSM should, and of course, obviously your customers. So I think that's the other thing is you take that different mindset to that you to your product versus your program. You can see how things would change greatly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Totally. Love it. All right. You ready for our dark horse?
Yeah, what's our number one?
Yeah, so this one was really interesting, and I was surprised when I looked at this. Not because it wasn't a good episode, but because it's actually it was a great episode. It was just so different than maybe a lot of our other topics. So the fact that this one stuck out is fascinating, and I think the reason it stuck out. So this was Gary Yao Chan, who is the co-founder of Clarity Inbox. His was
Mm,
actually our most listened to episode this season. And what that episode was about Gary actually shared how he back before he had started his company, he worked for a different company specifically as an onboarding specialist. And he mentioned how he took the role very differently than maybe most people do. So if you think about onboarding, right, what most of the time we do is our end game is to just get them onboarded,
yeah.
right? If you're an implementation, as an example, your end game is to get your customer just launched. That's the end game. Gary took a different approach. So when he would get on calls with customers, he would have them walk through and he would ask them constantly about the places where they were confused, why they were stuck, He would ask them about their pricing model and the features that maybe they had or they didn't have and how they were bundled. And he used every single call that where he was onboarding a customer. He used every single one as a way to identify both the pain points and the places that really triggered the customer to get automated. In other
Mm,
words, he looked at his job as an implementation specialist as a product manager or a product owner.
mm,
So he used that time and that information to then identify ways that they could improve the product by either adding in simpler tool tips, changing the verbiage, changing how they bundled things together. And all of that information then led to some massive updates and changes to the product. So what's interesting about this is what if, just as a for instance, so many teams have people who are spending a lot of time trying to get customers onboarded. What if we were spending more time in the onboarding process paying attention to getting face to face with the customer as they're going through and learning the software, and then identify the places where they're getting stuck, where they're getting confused, and then use that as a way to then enhance the product so that we can move more into that kind of PLG motion that we want, where we want the product to sell itself or for the user to get more successful. I loved that idea. And I think it's one that I don't know that a lot of CS and implementation people see as part of their role, is that they can be really influential in the direction of how that product is perceived and how it's
yeah.
used by their customer. And so much of that can actually lead to product enhancements over time. So rather than just being like a reactive person who's just taking complaints to the product team, what if you were using that information to then enhance the product right up front and then collecting that information so it's easier for the product team to feel like you know what matters and what works, and they can use that to be more informed. So that was actually a
Mm,
really big surprise to me, but I tend to see that a lot of the episodes that do really well are the for us anyway. And if you're new here, who knows if this is just me looking at the analytics over the last 2 years. I see a lot of really good success on episodes. People really seem to latch onto them when it seems to be cross functional, or when someone is bringing something novel or a new lens or a new idea to a role that they didn't necessarily see before. So
yeah.
a lot of times, what we tend to do is we kind of get stuck in these, like, I've got a label, and that label means that's my job. And like, I mean, think about Courtney's episode we talked about at the beginning, or even John, and how John is thinking you need to reimagine how you think about your job if you're in customer education. Or Carson, right? You need to not think about yourself as this transactional seller who's just trying to get the deal done, and as somebody who really cares and is invested in the network and the relationship you have with the customer, and that is a big deal. So like, it's so interesting to see how a lot of the things that tend to perform really well is when we take a look at how we approach our jobs and our roles and what we're trying to achieve at our company. Whenever we take a fresh look and say, are we doing this the right way, or could we be measuring our success in a different way? So maybe as you head out and as we end out 2025 and we head into this new year, maybe we should all be looking and saying, could I reimagine how I look at my role, or how I look at my strategy, or how I look at what my company's objective is? And now all of a sudden, maybe it opens up entirely new pathways that can help us be way more successful in the long run.
That's awesome. I love that. TK, that's fantastic. So as we head into, as we end, I should say, this final season here, what's your
Final
homework
season. You
assignment
make
for
it sound
everyone?
like we're done. I hope not.
Final season this year, I said.
Oh,
What,
you
what,
mean final episode of this year is what
yeah,
you
yeah,
mean.
yeah, yeah. There it is. There it is. What would be your homework assignment? What would you give out to the audience?
Well, I mean, I know it's probably recency bias, but I mean, go into this new year and look and see if you can approach things differently. How can you take the things that you've learned, whether that's listening to us or other shows, and how can you apply that in a context that's going to help you change to be better, just a little bit better next year? That would be my main thing. If I were selfish, I would say, tell us your other homework assignment is, come tell us what are the things that you wish we talked about, or what are the things that we didn't talk about today that you thought were amazing that we should talk more about.
Mm,
I want to hear more from you to know how we can continue to enhance and make SaaS Therapy a better show for you over time. So that would be my other piece of homework. If I can give two, is that cool? Be
that's
better
great.
and tell us how we can be better. How's that?
Yeah, well, hey, there you go. I like that. I like that. I think for me, my homework assignment I'm giving myself, I'm talking to myself, is really really going back to the basics, um, because I believe that doing the basics differently will sometimes yield results than doing something completely
Mhm.
different. I think sometimes we're unaware of how we are doing in just the common things that we're like, oh yeah, we should, I should ask, hey, how are you feeling about renewal? Such a common question. We should ask that, but do we ask it really 6 months before? Do we ask it 9 months before? Um, in customer education, are we really looking at the data and saying, okay, we had 40 certifications this last quarter. If you have 1 million licensed users, does 40 really make a dent? 40 certifications and 1 million users, is that really making a dent? But that's the thing you're talking about. And then, hey, our goal for next quarter is 80. Is that really making a
Mm.
dent? Is that really doing something? Let's go back to just the basics and say, okay, where are we really at? Where do we really stand? And then how do I change what I'm currently doing to get to those better results that we're talking about? Maybe just going back and taking a look at the basics.
Yeah. It's so super funny that you mentioned that. I had a little known secret about me, Casey. When I was a little kid, I did gymnastics for like a couple years. I wasn't very good, but I remember I had a coach, and one of the things he said was practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes permanent.
Mm,
And his point was that so I don't know if you ever heard the quote from Michael Jordan where it basically says something like you can practice shooting 8 hours a day, but if your technique's wrong, all you're going to do is
yeah,
be really good at shooting the ball the wrong way,
right,
right?
right.
So you have to get the fundamentals down on every level if you want to be good. So like that idea of when it's like if you practice wrong, right? If you don't actually follow the fundamentals correctly, then all you do is just make yourself super entrenched in doing things the wrong way.
Right.
So that idea of getting back to the fundamentals and practicing the fundamentals correctly, oof, such a big impact in being able to be successful in the long term. So I love that. It's really, really good advice.
Well, Todd, fantastic. That was a great 2025. Appreciate all your hard work in this. Thanks again to all of our guests that participated. If you want to be a guest and you have something that you would like to talk about, please reach out to us on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear from you. It's just been fantastic. So thanks to everyone for listening to SaaS Therapy and trying to get better. I mean, just that and alone is awesome to see. So thanks everyone.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, everybody. SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.